And we're live. Welcome back, everybody. We're hopping on with a great guest today. We got Austin Loza, MMA. He's going to jump on, talk about how wrestling changed his life, how wrestling impacted, and a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this channel, like mindset, lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, training, weight management, that sort of thing. So we're really excited to have Austin on. He's a background college wrestler, had some amateur fights, and now he's going professional. So he'll tell you more about himself and his background, and we're going to talk a little bit about those overlaps, those parallels we see in the wrestling space, in the fighting space, and how we can bridge that gap. But he knows better than anybody, right? We spend so much time with the physical and not as much time with the mental, and how bridging that gap could really make a difference for up and coming wrestlers, up and coming fighters, how to stay hungry, that sort of thing. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Happy to answer them. Obviously, if you're a little shy, don't be afraid to send me a DM anytime. We can go over any of those questions you might have. Just trying to see how we can get Austin to jump on. Very excited for him. He's got some interesting videos. One of the videos you guys should check out. I think it was at Dayton Fix. He was competing against him, and it's pretty funny. So he's got some really good videos. There he is.
Yo.
Hey, what's happening? Let me fix this. I was just giving you a brief intro to the live audience.
How are you guys? Dang, let me see if I can't get better lighting here.
Yes, sir. We're here. Was just going into it a little bit, telling them about your background with wrestling and MMA and that sort of thing, and
Yes, sir.
just hoping that help bridge that gap and hopefully show them kind of the connection between the mind and the body. So,
Yes, sir.
how is your day going so far?
It's good, man. I got a workout in this morning. Got some strength conditioning, upper body, a little bit of cardio, and some bag work. Here in a little bit, we will probably go and get some striking a little bit later. Throughout the rest of the day, too, I'm just doing some chores and whatnot, but I'm going to be doing some visualization, some studying of some of these fighters that I feel like I'm kind of similar to. So I have a video today as well with my workout, so that'll be coming out later today.
Yeah, I was actually just telling the listeners to check out your video with Dayton Fix and how it's funny. See that? That's a good starting point, and obviously got some educational stuff on there, technique.
Sure.
Doing it in real. That's what I love, because you'll do a technique and then you'll show it in real time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I like to do that because you got to know how it's actually going to work in a match or in a live situation too.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to see that it's legit, right? And legitimize it. Here I am doing it in an actual fight. So I'm just curious, how has your wrestling background really, shaped your MMA game?
Uh, for sure is helped me be a lot more confident in knowing that I'm going to take somebody down whenever I'm in the cage with them. Um, Anytime that I know that I'm fighting a striker, I know that I can take them into deep waters. I know they're not going to have the cardio like I do. The wrestling room puts you through a mental grind, through a physical grind as well. So your body has to really get used to that. So I think wrestling as an overall base, man, it's helped me so much being a fighter mentally and physically.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually saw a post recently, and I think it was between Marab and O'Malley.
Yeah.
Takedowns. Did you see that one?
I don't think I saw that one where they were doing takedowns.
Just basically saying that, when there's a threat of the takedown, it opens up the strikes, and that
Right.
I'll share it with you. It was a pretty good post. I think some big time coach just talking about how, that obviously leveled that fight.
Absolutely.
Was the fear of the takedown, and obviously him having the wrestling base was huge, right?
Yes, had him on his heels a lot more.
Had him on his heels. Yeah, I mean, even in wrestling, right? We wanna keep guys on their heels. That's why I think we were talking about that yesterday. Just keeping the guy. Best defense is a good offense. Keeping keeping that attack. I mean,
Absolutely.
like
Keeping the
the
pressure on.
like the basis of Iowa style. Gabe,
Right. Go,
what do you
go,
think
go.
the biggest adjustments, like going from, we talked yesterday, but like college wrestling to MMA now?
Mindset. A lot of it has to do with mindset. Doing the things that you need to do on your own, you know, because you don't
Mm,
have that's telling you to do that stuff. That you don't really have people telling you to do it in college either, like going to classes and eating the right things and stuff like that. You kind of have to do that on your own, but really in this kind of space, you really have to either do it on your own or you're not going to get it done at all, and you're not going to make progress. So that's kind of a motivation there.
yeah, so you're more on your own, more independent. You got to be a self starter. It
Right. You know.
like motivated. Um, yeah, that's all makes sense, and that's a big thing. Like my philosophy with my clients is like being your own best assistant coach. So
Yeah.
like having the tools. Like I'm just a guide. A coach is just a guide.
Right.
I'm trying tools to be independent, essentially,
Yeah.
and just even with your mindset, like having a daily plan with the physical aspect. That's why I'm a big believer in tracking. Like just really old school. I was looking for like a journal here, just like boom, paper.
Yeah.
And there has to be some sort of system that you're tracking your workouts, your nutrition, and that's like the basis, right? So,
Right.
have you ever used like MyFitnessPal or any like nutrition apps, Austin?
Not really. I mean, yeah, I've used some here in the past, but I usually try and keep stuff in my iPhone notes.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the notes is key, right? If that's what works for you, like the notes is key, and then obviously you can write down your like lifts and what you're doing, your run times, your different interval times. But
Yes.
I would say if it what isn't measured isn't managed. So like
Right.
as a coach, how am I supposed to gauge your progress if we have different, you know what I mean? If we don't know the times, we don't know the numbers. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But that's a whole nother topic. When it comes to your MMA, like, what do you feel like is your favorite wrestling technique that that crossed over or translates well, or that you use a lot for the
Man.
list?
Into fighting, yeah, man. Anytime we can get into a clinch, I'm hit a inside trip every single time. So takedowns like that, you know, make being a wrestler is definitely given me a strong double leg in MMA too. Like
Hmm.
combinations are so much easier to set up knowing that I'm going to hit a double leg because of wrestling. It gives me that confidence to shoot that double leg, keeping my head up, good posture, things like that, and then being able to defend whatever their defense is, their sprawl. Now I already know, okay, I need a knee slide and I can get back up, get my head up in most cases anyway. So
So you would say like the head up, chest up, back straight, like that thing we always say as wrestling coaches translates well. Position,
right, there's basics.
posture. Yeah, and that was going to be like my next question on this topic. Like, how do you blend the striking with the wrestling takedown? Are you doing it as a combination? Like, think about like a younger wrestler maybe trying to think about that.
Right. Yeah. So I've developed a lot more with my striking and definitely yeah with my strikes using combinations to set up those takedowns instead of just taking blind takedowns. You know, it's really hard to. I mean, you can sometimes get to people's legs, but it's going to be a lot harder. You might even take a few more shots that way,
Hmm.
but I think setting it up with your combinations is going to be easier.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a good idea to be diving at the legs, right?
Right. Now diving head down like a lawn dart.
No love.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I talk about that a lot with wrestlers. Just like I use the Nike symbol or like a plane taking off. Like when you shoot, you got to shoot through somebody.
Yes.
Versus
Down.
even without MMA, I think that's an important concept.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And then staying like super high level. Like I do think that like MMA takedowns are different because you have like the upper body posture, the
Mm,
upper almost grip style. I think
yes.
help
And
a lot of wrestlers because
you almost don't have to hit a knee sometimes, you know? So sometimes it's harder. It's on your back a little bit more.
definitely I think to being in good position, head up, chest up, like that's why I love ducks. Or
Yes. Yes.
so a lot of the wrestlers that's like an advanced move, but I think teaching the kids ducks from the jump is good to develop that habit, even in like middle school, early on.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're also incorporating hand fighting into that too.
Yeah, that's a big part, hand fighting, the pressure. So
Yes.
you mentioned mindset earlier, how that helped you. What are some like things you do leading up to a fight? Any like rituals or routines that would help?
Man, I like to watch a lot of. Well, I'm in the military, so I got that big pull to the military, and I always feel motivation and strongly about the military whenever I see motivational videos that, or even clips from movies. Um, so sometimes I'll watch, just people doing harder things than what I'm doing in the moment,
Mm,
and that kind of reminds me, like, that I could be doing way worse. Whatever I feel like sucks right now doesn't really suck that bad. So, for example, I just watched the other day a YouTube video of some guy who actually went ahead and had a few former Navy SEAL instructors come and
hmm
put him through one day of what they call Hell Week. So they put him through one day of it, and he survived the whole day. But from like 4 a.m. to about 6 p.m. that day, he was just doing workouts, and pretty much that entire time they were yelling, but while they were breaking him down, they were also letting him know, like, the only reason you're breaking is because your own mind, your own mental. So things like that, hearing those things, getting those reminders helps a lot. And then, focusing on what I can control in my camp or things like that. I can't worry about too much of the outside.
absolutely, yeah. We talked about that, controlling the
Yeah.
controllables. I really like how you keep going back to like the video modeling. That's definitely a strategy that I tell wrestlers and clients is, say you like a wrestler, um, Brett Metcalf wrestling, or you
Yeah.
pick Tony Ramos, you pick somebody. I'm just using these names, but
Yeah.
you want to have a model, somebody who's not obviously a competitor or somebody who's from the generation past, and use them to as a means of confidence and motivation. Um,
Yes.
so it's really important to have these like mental models and use them to strengthen our mind and basically do film study because like in football we used to watch a lot of film and wrestling has changed. Luckily it's progressing, but you need to watch yourself wrestle, but you also watch other people. And that
Absolutely. Things that you pick up on, things that you're good at with that other wrestlers are, have already perfected. Because you can pick up those little details.
100%, yeah, I like that. And then obviously motivational videos, right? Motivation, everybody's trying to figure out how to get more motivated.
Yes.
How do I get more motivated? Really, motivation starts here, starts with
Yes.
so. But using things like wallpapers, goal reminders, videos really helps. I think
Yes.
people are just think it's like BS or corny, so I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of times, like, that's false motivation. You should not use false motivation. Honestly, I don't care as long as it
right.
motivates me. As long as it gets me off my butt and making me feel like I can do more than what I am, then that's all I need. Because even some false motivation will put you into the right places.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yep,
Go.
exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about weight management. Wrestlers are used to cutting weight, obviously. How is that different in MMA, and what are your thoughts on that?
So I've definitely had to think about that a lot more. You know, you're cutting weight for longer periods of time,
Mhm.
and there's been times in my earlier career where I've had trouble making weight. So, and that's embarrassing to do that. It really is truly embarrassing to do that when you're supposed to be a professional, right? Anytime you're competing, that's supposed to be you being professional. So you should always make weight, but if you don't do it the right way, of course it's going to be hard. So I've had to take those kind of like hard lessons and take
Mhm.
long looks at myself. And then I finally, kind of got it down packed where, I'm eating healthier, those cravings and those sodas, things like that. You're eating junk food when you shouldn't. Um, Processed foods. It's really just the simplest thing is cutting out the processed foods and then enjoying alternatives.
Mhm.
it's really you can still get that satisfaction either way. But you're cutting weight for months before, maybe a couple months before. If you're doing it correctly, you're doing, water loading, and then you're having to eat low carb, high protein meals, low sodium a lot of the time, and then you're having to eat maybe 4 to 5 meals a day between training, trying to keep up with that. So that's kind of the difference in that. So it does get a little bit harder and a little bit more expensive. You're eating a little bit
Yeah.
healthier and more meals, but it's worth it, because you're gonna feel better. You're gonna have that energy, and then come the week that you're, losing all the weight and actually cutting the weight to get down to your final weight, it's gonna be a lot easier. You're not gonna feel like crap.
Yeah, and that's how I usually suggest wrestlers do it. Is a lot of the things you mentioned in the video in this is weight management wise, water loading, lower sodium, higher protein, moderate carb. Yeah, and then I said it from the jump is like monitoring your intake, your caloric intake and eating, and then eliminating the junk. So
Yes.
I'm a big believer before we can add things, we must eliminate. So you hear a lot of talk about like your to-do list, right? Like, what do I need to do today? But it's like, what can you take off your list?
Right.
Is it watch? Is it going through TikTok? Is it eating bad food?
Yep.
Is it staying up late? So we are taught in society to add more and more and more when we need to reverse engineer our goals and think backwards. What do I need to eliminate? Toxic people, negative influences. It's things like that,
Yeah.
because it's so busy, different, you know what I mean? And so it's really interesting your approach to the weight cut and weight management, and it's really the best way to do it. So obviously the big difference for the don't know is the 24 hours versus the 1 to 2 hours.
Right.
And so wrestling, we would have to cut weight and compete right away. Where MMA, there's a day in between, right? Typically.
I feel like in most cases it's harder sometimes to recover from that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the 1 to 2 hours, but that's why it's important right after your weigh-ins to be doing those healthy things, peanut butter with honey on a little bit of rice cake or something like that. Those small things, and then hydrating correctly, um,
Mm-hmm.
so that we're not feeling like crap. Because it might not even be a case of you not having enough cardio. It just might be the case of you just didn't recover correctly, and your muscles didn't have enough chance to get that recovery in those 1 to 2 hours. So that's crucial.
That's such a good point you brought up. Not the cardio. So
Yeah.
I tell like because let's think about it logically. Like if you're a wrestler and you're pretty committed, I work with a lot of wrestlers who are and fighters. Obviously, you're putting in the physical work.
Right.
2 hours every day. Maybe it's off season now, 2 or 3 times a week, couple privates.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a physiological issue. It's a recovery after the weigh-in, which you talked about, and obviously a mindset thing where you're fear of fatigue, afraid to get tired,
Yeah.
and that's a whole nother IG
Yeah.
live on how to deal with that and what your thoughts should be like. But yeah, it's not a physical thing. It's did you hydrate with electrolytes correctly? Did you have a fast acting carbohydrate?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
do the things that you're talking about if there's 24 hours, I'd probably recommend like, having a meal every 2 to 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
getting weight back up, baselining.
Right.
Uh, with more of a fighter like yourself, it's a little different. But yeah, it's 100%. It's like this kid works out every day. It's not that he's out of shape. It's
Right.
not eating the right things.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. So that right after that weigh-ins, I feel like is super crucial. And
right away.
fighters, they have that leisure of having the 24 hours, I think. But the 2 months of weight cutting usually um, it kind of evens out. You just have to do it correctly.
This is all great stuff about weight management. I'm happy you talked about it. So obviously, what are some meals? What are some things you're having? I know you said, I was going to the grocery store. Like, what are some of your go-tos?
Oh, some jasmine rice, eggs. All people don't like bacon a lot, but I love bacon. Bacon and spicy, breakfast sausage. I'm a breakfast guy, and breakfast is
Me too.
usually healthy too if you do it right. So I'll get some jasmine rice. Well, I'm not cutting weight, of course. I get some jasmine rice, some eggs, some of that sausage, and I'll put that in a bowl, mix it together, put some hot sauce, and that's my breakfast. I'll even eat that for lunch and dinner sometimes too.
Yeah, you
But
can change it if you need the protein.
yep. Add
Uh, you know,
bacon. I'll put potatoes in there sometimes.
definitely, I like that. And I don't know with the military if you've been overseas yet or not, or if you've been out of the much.
No, sir, not yet, not yet. But
That's
we went. Goodness,
all good. It's
we went.
be adaptable.
I know, right?
Scrapping with the phone. We got a hand fight with the phone.
Yes, we do. Goodness. No, but
You were saying you went somewhere.
we went to the Mojave Desert. It's called NPC. It's a training that we did out there. So, well, I haven't been overseas. That's probably the longest training I've been at, besides basic and AIT.
Sounds tough though in the desert. That's in California, right?
Yeah, that was out in California, close to the 29 Palms base. Man, that when we were there, it was like record-breaking heat. I think it was 117, at least for that year. We were like, there was people dropping like flies. They were not drinking water properly.
Importance of hydration, right? So,
Oh,
how has like your military experience at least helped your MMA or wrestling? Did that provide? Do you feel like the wrestling helped you in the military and vice
oh,
versa? Kind of just want your thoughts because that's your obviously your career right now, one of your
yeah.
main drivers.
Yes. And this is my dog too. He wants to get into the
The
camera
dog
here.
is good.
Come here, buddy.
Everybody loves the dogs.
Yeah.
Gonna get our views up.
Yeah. There he is.
Wants to be involved.
Oh,
It's a
that's my boy.
beautiful dog.
He's my dog Rollo. This is Rollo. But yeah, well, being in wrestling before going to the military, I already knew that it wasn't going to be harder than what I've been through with wrestling
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So the confidence knowing that I was going to get through that training just fine. I was nervous, but I knew it was going to be okay. Just listen to what you're told, and you're going to do a lot of push-ups, and you'll be okay. But um, going through that stuff, it helped give a lot of morals and values, I feel like. And you can either take those from basic training or you can choose not to. And I chose to. One of the, acronyms is leadership, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and then personal courage.
Mm-hmm.
I try to live, I try and base my life off of that. I try and, do things a little bit more morally right because I represent something bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm.
But wrestling kind of helped give me that mentality, that whenever I go into something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to do things right whenever people aren't watching, things like that. So, and then being in the military and then going into fighting after I come back from basic and all of that, I already knew I wanted to compete, but going through basic and stuff, it kind of helped give me the confidence. Like, these people haven't been through what I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure in a cage, I can make them break before I do. So that was kind of my confidence going into the cage. But um, it's a nerve wracking experience for sure.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's definitely a good part about building confidence is what you said is about reminding yourself of like the sacrifices you've made, past accomplishments, past achievements. That's why it's important to like not only watch back your bad matches or your bad fights, but also your good ones.
Yes.
We're leading into a competition. It's not the time to critique,
Right.
beat yourself down. So obviously that's something that we get a little wrong as wrestlers and coaches, because we're always fixated on what to do better. What do I need to do better? What do I need? Right? Perfectionism. So that could really lead into some mindset challenges. But that's super cool. So you've obviously used wrestling was a solid base, and now
Yeah.
the military kind of added another layer with leadership.
Yes.
And I think that that's the ultimate goal with every wrestler or athlete I work with is like to make your best self first.
Mm.
Then you start helping your teammate, and then you can start helping your school, your community, your nation. So it's like you want to become a triple threat.
Yes, sir.
It takes a lot to get there. You got to build the base with yourself. Leadership. People think leadership is like telling people what to do.
Right. Right. It's not.
Yeah,
Um,
very pop. Yeah, tell me your thoughts on that.
no, it's a lot more of, leading by example, of course, um, like I said, the acronym stands for loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, humans, we fall short of those things all the time. But the the best leaders are the ones that try their best to, be a representative of that, no matter how many times they fall down. So that's kind of the difference in a real leader, and then somebody who's going to just be there or be a follower.
Yeah, definitely. Leadership is definitely something that's another thing with mindset that's a hard topic to hit if you're a coach and you got 50
Yeah,
guys. So it's like one of those things that goes by the wayside. But yeah, I think if people want to be a leader, it starts with yourself. You got to lead by example. You got to live that lifestyle. And then, you help your practice partner, then you help your group, then you help the upper weights, then you
yep,
help the team. You see it, it's in progression. So that's awesome. Um, and you can't ever point at people like that's not my job. Like, you got to mop the mats, right?
right,
It
right.
starts
Humble,
cleaning up and you know showing respect and that sort of thing. So
absolutely.
I'm a big believer in that. I think I saw something a long time ago. It was like a West Point graduation
Yeah,
speech. One of the generals and somebody was basically telling them like it starts with you, and
right,
it's really powerful.
absolutely. I might watch that.
It's
Uh,
old, but I gotta find it.
okay,
That would be a good one for sure.
heck yeah.
Um, just wrapping up the training and strategy, like talk about like your fight camp, how wrestling fits into that, using it as a tool when you're training like all the martial arts, striking, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's a huge part of it. That's most of the time. That's my base as a fighter, right? As a wrestler. So that's going to be a lot of what the game plan is going into fights. And I'm not afraid to say that either. People are going to know that I'm going to go in there and wrestle.
Yeah.
Eventually, right? But what they don't know is what else we're working on too. So that's the big part of it. But yeah, being a wrestler, that's going to be whenever we get into those deep waters, I know that I'm going to be able to swim. So
Hmm.
that's what's helped me or given me the confidence with wrestling for sure. Going into this camp, training wrestling in it.
I'm curious, and this is kind of a not a trick question, but how you respond. Like, have you ever tried to use just pure wrestling to win a fight or like a match? And if so, like, how does that work? If you're just like, or you can't, you have to blend everything. Like,
I mean, yeah, you absolutely could. I mean, you'd end up having to do something else, right? Because the only way to get finishes are through tap out or um, knockout or TKO, right? So you can do 90% of wrestling, and then once they're on the ground, that's the 10% of ground and pound, and you're done with the fight. So yeah, absolutely, you definitely could, and I have before. I love the lat drop, of course, too. So anytime somebody comes into the clinch, I'll look for that. I remember doing that in one of my fights right before my amateur title fight, and I was just doing a lot of wrestling. I wasn't even striking a ton,
mhm.
and then once I got up into the mount, that's where I finished the 10%.
That's great. And so, how has it been like adding jujitsu in submissions? Are you guys doing like the small glove, like ground and pound stuff? Like maybe one guy has gloves, one guy doesn't. Like, tell us about like a training plan, like a weekly cycle. Like,
Oh yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. So well, on Tuesdays and Thursdays right now, I've been going to wrestling,
nice.
and then no-gi jiu-jitsu. So we've been working on some jiu-jitsu there. I'm trying to do on Wednesdays and Fridays. Definitely on Fridays, I'm trying to go to more sparring sessions. And then yes, with the little gloves, we'll do little gloves, adding in some of that wrestling as
Nice.
well. Taking so that we can get into those deep rounds, and do some wall work, things like that.
Wall work. Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Absolutely, You got to control the cage or know where you are around the cage too. So that's some things I'm going to be focusing on mostly throughout this camp. A lot of jiu-jitsu too as well though. So at least knowing how to defend submissions, or once I end up into a submission, um, there's a field where I can go into a submission that I'll actually be able to go and get that submission in the fight, instead
Mm-hmm.
of freeze up, maybe not know where to go from there. So that'll help a lot.
Yeah, so it sounds like transitions and things
Yeah.
like that, submission defense, transitions, using your wrestling, leveraging that. Yeah, that sounds really great. Do you feel like wrestling shapes like the culture of like the MMA gym or BJJ compared to like other martial arts? Would you say a lot of the guys have a wrestling base, or how does that influence the culture like MMA and gym?
Um, like with BJJ guys and wrestlers like going together, are you talking about like
Just yeah, in general, do you feel like wrestling is like a big part of the gyms you train at, or
huge, absolutely, and I feel like it should be a little bit more important to some of these other gyms, like jiu-jitsu gyms. I feel like most of the time your matches start on the feet, right? So you have to learn how to do a takedown. You can't always be pulling guard or doing trips, things like that. Those things. Some of those things are dangerous and put you into dangerous positions to get scored on or submitted yourself. So I feel like it's super important to know how to control somebody with hand fighting, and then not only doing that, but setting up yourself for at least some kind of takedown, whether it be a double leg, high crotch, or single. They don't have to be anything fancy, but those three bases should be what everybody knows beginning wise. And every match starts on the feet, like I said, um, and that's probably what do we say in wrestling? It's usually true too. Is whoever ends up with the first takedown ends up winning the match,
Mhm.
right? So um, I think that's still a huge thing in jiu-jitsu too, because if you're able to put that pressure on somebody, they're less likely to want to keep going. You're imposing your will on them.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely important to encourage and reinforce the guys get the first takedown, probably in fighting just as much as wrestling. And we were talking about that stat. It's like 86% of wrestlers get the first takedown win. But what I try to do is help the other 14% be able to bounce back and flush those mistakes.
Yes.
Call it mistake ritual and being able to overcome those moments of adversity, because I've been there personally, and like you get taken down first, it kind of throws you off because you
Yep.
didn't have a chance to impose your will. But that's why it's so important for guys to chain grapple, chain wrestle, work through the positions, and play and spar.
Yep.
Because we get places and you won't freeze up, you won't stop. I think grappling does a better job with that. That's why when you see a guy cross over from wrestling and do a little bit of jiu-jitsu and come back, they're used to flowing.
Yes.
Versus stop, go to your belly, give up the takedown through.
Yeah.
So I think
And,
that's a super important skill to develop, is trusting yourself and being able to work through the positions and things like that. I want to ask before we close out, like a few questions for you. And do you have a fighter, or do you think there's an MMA fighter that should use their wrestling more, or doesn't get enough credit for their wrestling, that maybe goes under the radar, that you like to watch?
I gotta say, man, Sterling, Aljamain Sterling, yeah, he probably gets slept on for a lot of his wrestling. He's a very good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that should use their wrestling more. Um, let's see, man. Maybe Brandon Moreno. I'd love to see him use some more wrestling. I feel like he could be a little bit more dominant in some of those fights. At least get some of those control time, get some of that control time
Mm-hmm.
back. A little bit more wrestling. And they got a lot of good guys at his gym too. So I know they can definitely get him some good takedowns and some defense too. Love it.
Yeah, definitely two really fun guys to watch with some underrated, super good grappling. It's
Yeah,
definitely watch them. All right, how about favorite wrestler, past and present?
past and present. Oh,
Maybe when you were a kid, somebody you really liked, and then like maybe now you're like, wow, that wrestler's really good.
Absolutely, yeah. So I used to always watch the Kale Sanderson instructional videos. So
Me too.
Kale Sanderson and Kerry Kolak. So both of those guys, they were huge to me. But nowadays, of course, Jordan Burroughs, David Taylor, those were some of the biggest inspirations to me. Like in high school, they were explosive at the time. Those were the guys that you wanted to be like, right? And still want to be like. But
Hmm.
those are my favorite wrestlers, past and present.
Yeah, those guys really changed the game for wrestling in terms of like marketing, content, bringing eyes. So they're still definitely impacting the sport big time. Um, what about favorite team?
Team, gotta go with OSU. Gotta stick to my roots, man. Got to.
Yeah.
John
Yep.
Derry, and then I always have to pull for the Cowboys.
What an awesome year they had, right?
Right. Yes, that was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back in like the mid 2000s, like 05, 06, 04, like the Cowboys were it.
They they were the it
Definitely.
factor, and
Their technique was like way ahead of the curve, I think, for the time as well.
I agree. John Smith had some of those cheat codes for sure. You could say.
Yeah, I remember pulling up like the Pat Smith, the VHS
Yes.
tape. While we're on this, the kids don't realize now how lucky they are with social media and learning technique.
Right.
That,
It's
right?
so accessible nowadays.
You can literally learn anything, but I think now it's the opposite problem. We have too much information, and it's like drinking out of a fire hose, and we don't know where to look. That's
Right.
where, that's why I want to put people onto your page and see. I try to keep it simple, keep it basic, because the fundamentals win, right?
Absolutely.
I always say brilliance with the basics. So, you know, maybe any last things I wanted to say, like maybe a quote or something that really helps you kind of get in the zone, get ready to train, get ready to fight, that you think could help maybe a younger wrestler coming up.
Absolutely. We talked about this yesterday too. You never rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. That's always true, and it's going to be true for everybody, and every man in his life, in your life. And that goes for jobs, relationships, everything like that. So, you really have to put in your all. You know.
Absolutely. It's all you get what you put in, and that's why wrestling's such a great sport because it teaches you about life in that way where your effort matches your income, matches your ability, matches your outcome. So it really is all we get, what we get into it, what we put into it, we get out of it.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think that's a great lesson, man. So, I appreciate you, Austin, dropping gems to all the wrestlers, talking to us about discipline, mindset, and staying dangerous in the cage, man.
Yes, sir.
I hope some guys take some time to watch this, take some notes. But we'll definitely do this again soon. You guys check out Austin Loza MMA. Check his page out. Watch his videos. There's a lot of good technique on
My
there.
guy. And
Keep the faith,
y'all
brother.
y'all got to go check out Coach Coco right here, man. This is a smart guy right here. He knows exactly what I need, and he knows what you need too. So hit him up. Get in contact with him and have a consultation. You guys need to talk with him. And level up your mental game, especially coming up this next season. You want to be a state champion, or you want to make a name for yourself for your school. You can do that, but don't do it alone.
100%. Never be afraid to ask for help. I appreciate those kind words, Austin. Keep grinding, brother. Keep the faith, and always wrestle and fight to win.
Yes, sir.
Next time, we'll get this out there.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you. Take care.
You
Bye.
too, man.